Hello, my name is Von Steinstra. I'm the president of the China Speakers Bureau, and today we talk with one of our speakers, Zhang Lijia, who recently did a novel, one you should read, Lotus, on prostitution in China, but also wrote an interesting editorial on the New York Times about social mobility that has stalled in China. Now, I know China is a country that has lifted millions out of poverty, where people are rushing to get more rich. So, Zhang Lijia, welcome to this hangout. What's
Thank you.
happening to China? Is the social mobility of the past, has that stalled?
I'm afraid in the past decade, social mobility in China has become stagnant, has stalled, as you said. I think when a country enters a middle level income country, the sort of tends to narrow, but there are also some specific in China contributed to this reason, which I should explain later. First of all, should I explain what is social mobility?
Tell me.
Anyway, social mobility refers to people's ability from one social class to another, which is mainly reflected in the countries, in people's economic status. You know, I was a factory worker. I come from a very poor working class family. And because I'm from a poor family and I traveled a little bit so far in life, so I'm very interested in this in this topic. There's an index to measure social mobility. It is called the elasticity of intergeneration income. Basically, it shows how much wealth or poverty parents pass down to the next generation. Nordic countries are doing the best. In Denmark, for example, the index is only 15%. In the United States, despite its reputation as the land of opportunity, the social mobility is not that great. It is 47%. China fares even worse at 60%. So higher it is, so smaller the social mobility. Yes, go ahead.
So how? What is it caused by? Why is it? It's of course when you become more wealthy, that is a problem for a country. But what is specific in China? What are you are an example of where social mobility has not been a problem. But what do you see around? What's hindering people in moving upward?
Right. I should give a brief historical introduction. Under Chairman Mao, the social structure was very rigid. The occupational mobility, for example, was zero because you were assigned a job. And after Deng Xiaoping introduced the reform, things began to change. Entrepreneurs emerged, middle class start to expand, and economy developed very fast. So the social structure began to change, and in fact, you heard lots of from rags to riches stories. But now the new rich and powerful officials have formed vested interest groups. This is quite bad news. And also, China has become very unequal, one of the most unequal society in the world, which I think for socialist countries is such a disgrace. You know, in China, there's a recent research that come out by Beijing University, which indicate that in China, the richest 1% holding 1/3 of the country's wealth. So the income gap
Maybe you
is
can move
really...
you have to move the camera a little bit upward. We're
Right,
losing
okay.
your sight here.
All right. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Now, what can be done about this? It's like it's still very much in the genes of the Chinese to become rich very fast. They would like in the US, it used to be a kind of honor to be part of the middle class. China wants to be rich very fast. Um, well, that's not going to happen. What policies should change to make people more happier and give them a chance to move upwards?
Okay, I understand. So before we come talk the solution, can I talk about the problems? I think
Okay.
that, the problem is after almost 4 decades of the reforms, however, the new rich, together with officials and other new elites, formed a system of vested interest. They possess huge wealth, and they have no motivation to share their wealth, power, or resources with anybody else. The vested interest group exists in other countries, but in China's case, the government controls large amount of wealth as well as the market itself. So those close to the powerful officials therefore have access to huge resources. And again, there's also the problem of the corruption and the lack of transparency and supervision. And another problem very specific to China is hukou system. It means that people from migrant
You have to
workers.
explain it a bit.
Okay.
It's a kind of internal visa where like that prevents people from moving to other places.
Yes, yes. So the hukou is called a family registry system. It's tied people to the place they are born. So that means basically there are, China are divided to type of people, rural people and urban people. The migrant workers, they can come to the city to work and leave their village. But they don't enjoy the same kind of treatment. And this system, the hukou system, prevents them from getting some desirable jobs in the city. If in the city you try to get your jobs, and some jobs they require the local residents. So that's one of the problems.
But there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk, Lijia, in politics of changing the hukou system for something better. But do you think that's only window dressing?
No, I think that they are trying to reform the hukou system. For example, they have kind of relaxed the control in some small cities, small towns. But I understand why they want to go, for example, in Beijing, if there's without the certain kind of management or control, everybody would want to come to Beijing. But overall, I think the hukou should be abolished because this is very unfair. And I was talking about social mobility is also, I think, China talking about the government has been talking about to build a harmonious society. It is irony is this, precisely the society is not harmonious. The social mobility is very small. The income gap is very big. So anyway, so I think this issue really should be addressed because the social mobility is very narrow. It's also index of how fair the society is. A society like China with a small social mobility, small social mobility damages economic vitality, damage the legitimacy of market economy, and also it poses risk for social unrest. People should be able to move from a lower rank to move upward. If you can't, they probably become rebellious or even take to the street.
Now, tell me, Lijia, is this part of the public debate, or is this more? I guess some of the academics in China must see this problem, or not?
Yes, there has few And when I wrote the article, I did a lot of research, and there are huge amount of articles talking about the issue and talking about the reasons why. They're talking about the hukou, talking about the vested interest group, but also the problem of the wealth redistribution. There's no such an efficient system yet. And also before social education has been served as an equalizer, as a social ladder for the poor to climb upwards. But now education has been made into industry, so has failed to facilitate the intergeneration, the flow from one class to another. So,
okay. Well, education is an issue we're going to address later also. What are suggestions that are coming out? Because the government is playing around with, at least fiddling around with the change of the hukou system. That's very restricting people to their own places. What other what other changes should be on the agenda?
Education, I was just talking about, and a better system to provide education for all, curbing corruption, and good rule of law. So all these things and political reform, more transparency.
But Xi Jinping, the current president, has corruption very high on his agenda. A lot of even high-placed people have been put in jail. You think he's not doing enough yet?
I think he has launched a high-profile anti-corruption campaign, and many tigers and flies have been caught. But I think that we cannot. I don't think corruption can be wiped out. Just rely on a few top officials to catch tigers. I think we need media supervision. We need the participation of ordinary people and a more transparent, open society. There are channels for people to express their views and opinions, and the rule better implement the rule of law.
No cultural revolution, I presume.
No revolution, I'm afraid.
That's good. Well, thank you for your insights here, Lijia. We close the session now. Thank you for your insights, and we will talk to you in another session.
Okay, great.